Novak Djokovic vs Francesco Maestrelli, Australian Open second round highlights. Serbian star downs Italian counterpart. Novak Djokovic moved a step closer to tennis history today, systematically dismantling Italian qualifier Francesco Maestrelli 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 to reach the Australian Open third round. The 38-year-old was in clinical form at Rod Laver Arena, winning 86% of his first serve points and never needing to shift into top gear. Maestrelli, playing only his second major main draw match, showed flashes of spirit by breaking Djokovic once in the final set, but was ultimately overwhelmed by the 10-time champion's precision. Djokovic will now face either Botic van de Zandschulp or Juncheng Shom, as he continues his quest for a record 25th Grand Slam title. Catch all the highlights and major updates below. Novak Djokovic vs Francesco Maestrelli live score. Australian Open 2026. Welcome. Good morning, tennis fans. This is the start of our live blog covering Novak Djokovic's second-round match against Francesco Maestrelli. Stay tuned for pre-match updates as they come in. Novak Djokovic vs Francesco Maestrelli live score. Australian Open 2026. Match details. Times date. Thursday, January 22nd. Time, 8 a.m. IST. Onwards. Times court, Rod Laver Arena. Times how to watch, Sony Sports Network and Sony Live app website. Novak Djokovic vs Francesco Maestrelli live score. Australian Open 2026, head-to-head. There is no prior professional history between Novak Djokovic and Francesco Maestrelli. Today's second-round match at the 2026 Australian Open is their first-ever meeting. Maestrelli is playing in his first-ever Grand Slam main draw, while Djokovic is chasing a record-extending 25th Grand Slam title. Novak Djokovic vs Francesco Maestrelli, Australian Open second-round highlights. When ice met fire. Melbourne Park woke that evening with a familiar hum, the kind that vibrates beneath the skin. The Australian Open, in its second round, had already begun to sort dreams from destinies. Under the white glare of Rod Laver Arena, Novak Djokovic walked out with the quiet certainty of a man who has written this story before, many times, in many chapters. Across the net stood Francesco Maestrelli, an Italian carrying youth, hunger, and the audacity required to believe that tennis, on the right night, can bend the script. This was not merely a contest of rankings or resumes. It was a conversation between eras. Djokovic began the match the way he often does, economical, precise, almost disarmingly calm. His footwork traced invisible geometry across the baseline, each step placed with intention. The ball left his strings with a low, skidding trajectory, refusing to sit up for Maestrelli's forehand. The Serbian star didn't rush. He waited. He always waits. For errors, for openings, for the moment when the opponent doubts. Maestrelli, however, did not arrive to play the role of wide-eyed understudy. From the opening games, he swung freely, his backhand a whip, his forehand a declaration. He took the ball early, tried to rob Djokovic of time, and for brief stretches, it worked. The Italian's shots painted the lines, and the crowd, ever eager for a story, leaned forward. Every winner he struck felt like a spark thrown into dry air. But Djokovic is a master of weather. Where others might flinch, he absorbed. He returned serves that seemed unretainable. He slid into corners, turning defense into neutral, neutral into offense, until Maestrelli found himself hitting one more shot than planned. Rallies stretched. Legs burned. And in those extended exchanges, Djokovic's discipline became a silent pressure, an unseen weight pressing down on the Italian shoulders. The first set unfolded like a lesson delivered without words. Djokovic's serve found its rhythm, not overpowering but surgically placed. Out wide, into the body, then a sudden kick that leapt away at the last moment. Maestrelli fought bravely, saving break points with courage and flair, but eventually the door cracked open. Djokovic stepped through with the efficiency of a champion who recognizes opportunity and never asks twice. If the opening set was control, the second was confrontation. Maestrelli raised his level, injecting more pace, more risk. He ventured forward, testing Djokovic at the net, forcing exchanges that disrupted the Serbian's baseline cadence. For a while, the match crackled. The Italian held serve with authority, pumping his fist, urging himself on. The crowd responded, their applause warmer, louder, as if willing the contest to stretch deeper into the night. Djokovic responded not with force, but with clarity. He shortened his backswing on returns, took balls earlier, and redirected pace with an almost casual cruelty. One rally in particular, a marathon exchange that ended with a Djokovic backhand threaded down the line, felt like a turning point. It wasn't just a winner, it was a statement. The Serbian glanced toward his box, not in celebration, but in acknowledgement, as if to say, now. From there, the margins grew thinner for Maestrelli. A forehand sailed long. A backhand clipped the net. The risks that once brought rewards began to demand payment. Djokovic, sensing the shift, tightened his grip on the match. He varied height and spin, drew errors with depth, and punished short balls with metronomic precision. The third set arrived with the quiet inevitability of dawn. Maestrelli, to his credit, did not fade. He continued to swing, continued to believe. There were moments, flashes of brilliance, where his talent shone unfiltered. A daring return winner. A delicate drop shot that brought the crowd to its feet. These were reminders that tennis's future is always knocking, even when the present refuses to open the door. But Djokovic closed the match the way he has closed so many before. Calmly, conclusively, without drama. His movement remained elastic, his focus unwavering. Match points came and went, the tension thick but controlled. And then, with one final exchange, a rally that ended on Djokovic's terms, the handshake arrived. Applause filled the arena, not just for the winner, but for the contest itself. In the end, the highlights told a familiar story. Djokovic's return game was relentless. His defense, elastic beyond reason. His mental composure, unshakable. For Maestrelli, the match was a hard-earned education on the sport's highest stage, one that no practice court can replicate. As Djokovic left the court, racket tucked under his arm, there was no grand celebration. Just the measured nod of a champion advancing one round further into a tournament that has become his second home. For Maestrelli, there was the knowledge that he had stood across the net from greatness and dared to play his game.